Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
On Friday, October 14th, 1994, the world learned that the 1994 Nobel Peace Prize had been won by Shimon Peres, Yitzhak Rabin, and Yasser Arafat. That very same night, Prime Minister Rabin's attention was hardly on peace with the Palestinians, as a tragic drama was about to reach its climax. At 8 p.m. on October 14th, 1994, an elite IDF commando unit known as Sayeret Matkal set out on a mission ordered by Prime Minister Rabin to try to rescue an Israeli soldier who'd been kidnapped by Hamas terrorists 5 days earlier and who was facing execution the next day unless Israel released 200 Palestinian prisoners, including Sheikh Ahmad Yassin, a founder of Hamas and a man responsible for multiple suicide bombings as well as Qassam rocket attacks against Israel. More than 100,000 people gathered at the Western Wall that Friday night, standing in prayer for the safe return of the kidnapped Israeli soldier. The Israeli commando unit traveled to the Arab village of Bir Nabala, just 10 minutes outside of Jerusalem, and began their rescue attempt. They met heavy resistance. The commander of the Sayeret Matkal unit near Poraz was killed. 10 other Israeli soldiers were wounded. And although Sayeret Matkal did kill all the terrorists holding the kidnapped Israeli soldier, the rescue attempt was too late. The Israeli soldier had already been killed. His name was Nachshon Wachsman. He was a lovely 19-year-old Israeli youth with bright eyes and a warm smile, serving the prestigious Golani Brigade of the IDF. And in Israel today, there's a children's center named after Nachshon Wachsman entitled Beit Nachshon that cares for mentally and physically challenged children. And of course, it's dedicated to Nachshon Wachsman's memory. But most important of all, Nachshon Wachsman was the son of Yehuda and Esther Wachsman, their third of 7 sons. And then it's an extraordinary honor for me to be sitting now here on L'Chaim with Esther Wachsman, the mother of Nachshon. And Esther, what a privilege it is to be sitting with you at this table. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm so sorry for your loss. And you had 7 sons. I'm sure every son you have is precious, and you know, every parent knows there's nothing we wouldn't do for our children. And the Jewish tradition teaches us the hardest pain for any human being to endure is the loss of a child. We're never supposed to bury a child. So I want you to know how really sorry I am. And we've had a few moments before the show began, and I already know you're an extraordinary woman, but it doesn't mean that you don't carry this pain with you all the time. I'm very, very sorry. And it is an honor for me to meet with you and to sit with you. And there's so much I want to ask you about and talk to you about. Before we talk about Nachshon, and I do want to hear from you what those 5 days were like, I want our audience to understand who you are, because you also have traveled a very interesting journey of your own. Esther, where were you born?
I was born in a DP camp in Germany. My parents were Holocaust survivors.
What were their names?
Arnold and Hala Zollman.
Very nice.
My mother had been in Auschwitz, had a tattoo on her arm that I never was told anything about. They did
What
not
do you mean
talk.
you were never told?
I would ask my mother what that number was, and she would just say It happened.
She didn't want to
never
talk about
told-
it at all?
Never.
How about your father?
Only much later when he got much older. Not at the time I was growing up. I knew nothing.
Esther, were you an only child?
No, I have a sister who is 10 years older than I am, whom my father hid with a Polish peasant woman. She was hidden for the 5 years of the war.
Okay, obviously from a different mother.
Yes.
Okay. But you grew up together as sisters?
Yes. Yes.
Did she know more than you?
Of course. She knew everything.
Did she tell you?
No.
What was her name?
Sandy.
Sandy. Were you close to her?
Very. I still am.
You still are. Where is she?
She has made Aliyah. She's in Jerusalem, where I am.
Okay, very good. So your mother survives Auschwitz,
Yes.
doesn't tell you what the tattoo is, and your father?
Grossrosen, a labor camp.
Labor camp. They met in the DP camp?
They did.
Did they marry and have
Yes.
you and then?
They married in 46.
Okay,
I was born a year later.
okay.
And I came to the United States
With
when I was
them?
not quite 3.
Okay. How long were you in the United States?
I grew up in New York.
I see.
I was educated in New York. I left at the age of 22 for my master's at Hebrew University, and I never returned.
Okay. Do I gather from this story that your home was either Zionist, Jewish, or both? Which was
Both.
it?
Religious Zionists.
Very lovely.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
On the wall was the Declaration of Independence of the Jewish state, so they could hardly fault me for wanting to move to Israel.
But wait, were they happy for you? Or did they say, oh, we want you to stay?
They wanted me to stay.
It's hard
but
for
they
a
could
child.
not,
Of course.
raise any legitimate objection.
So you went to study Hebrew University?
Yes.
In which field?
History,
Wonderful.
specializing in the Holocaust period. Yes, and that's when I met my husband. I was married.
Your husband's name is?
Yehuda, yes.
And how did you meet him?
At university.
He was studying also?
Yes, he's also a child of survivors. They were from Romania, and he came to Israel at the age of 10, actually. But he was educated in Israel.
Did his parents tell him more
Yes.
than yours?
He knew everything.
He knew everything.
Yes.
Just reflect for me for one moment. My own feeling is that a survivor has the right to choose any style they want. There's no right or wrong here. At the same time, there has been, in some way, a subtle encouraging of survivors to tell the story. Do you have a feeling about this one way or the other? Would you encourage survivors to tell the story?
I think it's very, very important that survivors are speaking. I know there aren't so many left, and it's very important to hear their story. I think maybe the difference between my husband and myself is that they went to Israel, where it was more acceptable to talk about this when my parents came to America with an immigrant mentality, trying to be American. So that was hidden.
Not to digress too far, but I do want you to comment on one more thing. There was initially in Israel a very strange attitude towards survivors, almost blaming them for being too docile and for not fighting back. Over time, given all that the Israeli people have had to endure, there's a very different attitude now. It's as if the Israeli people have grown up when it comes to the issue of the Holocaust. And now, rather than blaming the Holocaust survivor, there's enormous empathy for what they had to endure. Do you think that what I'm describing resonates with you at all?
It is absolutely true. At one time, they were referred to as cattle who went to the slaughter. Today, Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Day, is known as Yom HaShoah v'Hagvura. It is named Holocaust and, how shall I put it?
Almost heroic.
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 Yeah, the heroes of the Holocaust.
Correct.
And the emphasis is on the Warsaw Ghetto Rebellion, but every survivor, not only if he was able to rebel, is considered having come through a horror
Yes.
and a tragedy. It's very
Survival
different from
itself
what you
is now
described.
viewed as a form of victory, is it not?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And good for the Israeli people. But you
Absolutely.
saw that arc.
Yes.
Yes. Have you had a hard time being the second generation, the child of Holocaust survivors?
As a matter of fact, yes.
In what way?
Though they did not tell me what they had endured or what they went through, it was clear to me that I was expected to always excel and be the perfect child, to sort of make up life to them, and to give them a reason, a hope, a meaning for living. I felt that.
Were they happy people, your parents?
I think so. There was a certain aura, perhaps, of sadness. I never had any relatives. I never had uncles, aunts, cousins in America. I did have a few in Israel. And my father was, I would call a stand-up comic. He could be there with the best of them. And there was a lot of laughter.
Okay. Well, it's a lot of laughter is a very good thing.
It is.
I'm happy for you. You begin to make a life with Yehuda in the state of Israel.
That is right.
This is still somewhat early Israel.
It's after the Six-Day War,
It was after, okay, it was after the Six-Day War.
when people were coming at that time.
Okay, all right. And by the way, there was a period of real euphoria after
Yes,
the Six-Day War,
absolutely.
which came crashing down in 73.
Right,
And so you lived through that as well.
I did.
And the two of you had 7 sons.
That is right.
Okay. Did you ever do anything academically yourself, professionally?
I taught for 28 years. I taught English as a second language at the Hebrew University High School.
Okay. So here you are, a mommy and a teacher at the same time, correct?
Yes.
You could have gone to Israel and been happy there. You could have gone to Israel and been in love with Israel. Which is it for you?
The second,
You're in love with Israel.
I am. I was there actually the year of the Six-Day War on a 6-month program of Yeshiva University. And while we were there for those 6 months, I knew that that's the only place I wanted to live and raise a family.
And you did it.
I did it.
Okay.
I was married in 70.
What year is Nachshon born?
Nachshon was born in 1975.
1975.
He was 19.
Okay. I described a little bit of what I sensed he was. But I want you to tell me, who was Nachshon Wachsman? You know, who was he when he was 10? Who when he was 13, we became bar mitzvah? And who was he when he was 19 years old?
Nachshon was my third child, and I had 4 children under the age of 5. So they were a group. And he was a lovely child. They belonged to youth movements. He was both we call it a camper in the youth movement and a counselor later. That was his whole life. He loved rappelling and snappling and going up to the Golan. Any free holiday, they would be on a trip in Israel, out there, seeing the country. When I had my twins, my youngest children, he was the most fabulous big brother anybody could want, because one of my twins is disabled, and he was the one who cared for him the most.
Really?
Very special relationship.
So Nachshon had a very sweet soul.
Very. Everyone is, I'm not saying, all my children are wonderful
I'm
and
sure.
terrific, but he was special, and his brothers would tell you the same thing.
Mm-hmm. You know, for an American Jew, and we know that every parent understands that their children, when they graduate high school, are going to go into the military. They're going to serve in the IDF. It is part of Israeli life. And there are many aspects of it which we could discuss in a different context about the importance of its socialization, how it basically is an equalizer. It also brings people from every aspect of Israeli culture into contact with each other. And very often, people's success later on is determined by how well they do in the IDF in their years of service. 3 years for men, 2 years for women. And Nachshon goes into the Golani Brigade, which is one of the prestigious. There are many prestigious aspects of the IDF.
He went into an elite commando unit of Golani after his two brothers
and I wanted you to really,
served.
that's what I really wanted to make sure everybody understood. He was, again, every Israeli who goes in is making a contribution.
Yes.
But there are certain levels you can go into. And your son, I assumed it was both somewhat of a choice and also he had to pass a series of tests and exams and physical and mental.
Yes.
And he did.
Yes.
But this was something he wanted, correct?
Yes, he got in by sheer force of will. He was not a big, strapping, husky guy. And his two older brothers had served in Golani. And he wanted to outdo them and be in this elite commando unit called the Orev Golani.
The Orev, okay, very good. And you already told me, you grew up yourself in a religious Zionist home.
Yes.
When you and Yehuda created a home for your children, was it similar? What was the Jewish character of your home that your children grew up in?
Very simple. The people of Israel, in the land of Israel, under the Torah of Israel.
Beautiful.
That was the ideology that I brought my sons up with, and they all did us proud.
Very good. So here you have a son, Nachshon, who is both committed to the state of Israel and the Jewish people. Do I have it right?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
I was at all their swearing-in ceremonies for the IDF, where they swore to protect their country at the risk of their own lives.
Where was this?
Golani was at the Golani Junction,
Correct.
Way up north,
Yes.
close to the Golan Heights. The other units are in different places.
Correct.
But we were there at least for each of our
Do you remember
three.
these moments?
Oh, of course. I remember my first son, I thought to myself, here's the girl from Brooklyn, daughter of immigrants, mother of soldiers in Israel. It was awesome to me.
Esther, I get chills when you tell this to me. I
So
get
do I.
chills. And then I wanted to ask you again, as an American Jew looking at this, to what extent is there anxiety in an Israeli mother or father? As proud as you may be, you know your child is now going to be at risk. Talk about the anxiety for me.
24/7. All three of those boys were in Lebanon. There were no cell phones. I never heard from them till they came home on leave. Nachshon came home on leave when he was kidnapped that week. And I know they were on different banks in Lebanon, and I had a map on my refrigerator marked with where there was one point where all three were at the army concurrently, and I had marked where they were, and I slept with a radio on my ear to find out what was happening.
So the reality is, as proud as you are, it does not mitigate the anxiety.
No, not at all. Mm-hmm. I can't even describe what it's like to be a mother of a soldier.
Mm-hmm. But it's not an anxiety that makes you want to leave.
Oh, never.
Never.
Never. I was asked that question by the world press who sat parked outside my front door that week of October 9th. And they asked me, are you sorry you left America? I said, I left America to make a life. I wanted my children to live here, not to die. And I would do it again in a flash.
So let's just go through that week. So, first of all, Nachshon's home on leave.
He was home on leave from Lebanon.
Okay.
That Friday he came home.
And I understand he went away basically on a Saturday to do some military training, and he
That's
said
right.
to you, I'll be back on Sunday.
That's right. Saturday night after Shabbat, he went up north, take a one-day course to operate a military vehicle for the Golani Brigade, and he parted with us and said, I'll be back tomorrow night.
Okay. By the way, I assume that this particular weekend, you were not terribly anxious.
No,
No.
no.
And at what point do you learn something is wrong?
He didn't come home Sunday night. There's no way a child of mine would change his plan or be delayed and not call me. No way. To me, by very late Sunday night, my son was dead.
That's what you were.
I believe that. On Monday, we had no news either.
Really?
Yes, it
And what was
wasn't
Yehuda saying? What was your husband saying?
We were very busy trying to find out what happened. We had called the place where he took the course. He did get the license. We called the fellow soldier he went with, who did come home. We were very busy and concerned. We notified the military authorities that there was a soldier missing. But
Were they responsive?
No, not then. Not then.
Isn't that infuriating?
Yes. They told us something of the sort that, okay, he's on leave, he's 19 years old, maybe he went off to a lot to have a good time. No, you don't know my children. There's no way that happened. On Tuesday, the news came from Israel Television.
Is that how you learned?
Yes, from the TV station.
And what did the report say?
They told us they'd received a videotape in Gaza from a Reuters photographer, and they were coming to our house to show that video. Nobody yet knew there was a missing soldier.
Is a phone call you get?
Yes.
By the way, that must have been horrific in and of itself.
We had no idea it was on the video. They just said they'd received a video that they must show us. Of course, I knew it was about Nachshon, but he was alive on that video. He spoke on the video, he identified himself, and he turned to Prime Minister Rabin and said, I've been captured by Hamas terrorists. They're demanding the release of their spiritual leader, Sheikh Ahmad Yassin, and 200 other Hamas terrorists. If you, Prime Minister Rabin, do not meet their demands on Friday at 8 p.m., they will execute me. That's the last I saw of my child.
Okay. What was your reaction immediately?
I was hysterical. I was hysterical. People were sitting on either side of me, embracing me, holding me. My husband refused to see the video. He just didn't want to see it. Nachshon was sitting on a chair, bound hand and foot, with a rifle aimed at his head. It was horrific.
Horrific.
Horrific. I'm getting very emotional just remembering it.
What do you do next?
We became totally involved in what we could do to save his life. I phoned Prime Minister Rabin, who told us he would never negotiate with terrorists.
Did you speak to him personally?
Yes, I did. He would never yield to blackmail, and he would never negotiate with terrorists.
And how did you react to that statement?
I sort of knew that was Israeli policy, but I was very upset. I phoned President Clinton because I do have American citizenship, as do my children through me. President Clinton was very responsive. He sent his Secretary of State to Israel.
Okay, you didn't speak to Clinton.
I did.
You got on the phone with Bill Clinton?
I did.
How did you manage that?
I don't know.
Okay.
They just contacted the one. I don't even remember how it happened,
Okay.
but I did speak to him. He was at Nachshon's grave a year later.
And what did Clinton say to you?
He was horrified. He said he was sending his Secretary of State, Warren Christopher, directly over to Israel.
And
Warren
Christopher
came and traveled back and forth from Gaza to Jerusalem, but he brought us no news.
You were doing everything you could
Yes.
to gain the release of your son.
There were Middle East experts in my home who were in contact with Islamic religious leaders in countries with which Israel has no relations, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia. They were able to contact Islamic religious leaders, and all those leaders were on the media saying, you must let the soldier go.
Everyone was, in essence, in your corner.
Yes,
They were all arguing for the release of Nachshon.
that is correct. Probably because of what you said earlier about the Nobel Peace Prize for Arafat.
Mm-hmm.
It was in his interest. He called our home too. Yasser
Arafat?
Arafat called our home.
Yitzhak Rabin had said to you, in essence, I can't negotiate.
That's right. I won't. I don't know
won't.
that I can't.
Okay.
Rabin was also Minister of Defense at the time, and his second in command was Motagur. Motagur came to our home. My husband said he was going out to the press, and he was going to lie. He was going to tell them there will be negotiations. Don't kill our son. We will negotiate. Motagur convinced him not to do that and told him that there were things going on behind the scenes and not to do that.
You then help create this rally at the Western Wall, is that correct?
No, I didn't create it. It was the chief rabbis who, on an hour or two's notice, over 100,000 people arrived.
Amazing, yes.
Yes.
Yes. How are you able to function at all as opposed to just sort of dissolving?
If you had asked me hypothetically, what would I do if I were to hear that this was happening to my son, I would have told you I could not possibly pick my head. I would collapse. For some reason, there was something motivating me. You've got to do more, talk to more people, try, make the effort. I never slept. I never ate or drank. I remember that week. So my house was wall-to-wall people all the time. There were ministers, Knesset members, religious leaders, and I was in the middle of that whole mayhem.
Was there something comforting about their being there?
There was something comforting about knowing that all our people were praying for this one Jewish soul. Yes, there was, but nothing, maybe the comforting word is not quite right, because I was pretty bad.
Yes.
But it was moving to know that everyone was there with me. Very moving.
You've described your husband has had different sort of reactions to things. How's he handling this at this point?
Oh, he was just as active and hysterical as I was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you feel together with him in this?
Very much so. And my sons.
Yes, I was going to ask you, but wait, they're his brothers.
Yes.
I mean, if this were my brother, I don't know what I would do. How did they handle it? What did they do?
Well, the brother, just a year under him, was in a preparatory army service. It's called Machina. And he took all the guys in his class, and they went out on a search party Monday night before we even got the video, on their own, without the Army's support. They were out there where he had been dropped off, trying to get to Jerusalem. His older brother was also in Golani at the time, and he had taken off he was also on leave, and he had taken off as a soldier with his friends up north to travel. He came home immediately, and again, they were very involved with everything the parents were doing also. The younger ones were sent out of the house. My twins were not yet 8. They were 7 years old. And the healthy twin, who's now a medical student, stayed with a friend in his class whose mother was the advisor of the school. He never came home. Our home had the whole police force right in front of the door. It was scary to come home. And Shalva's director came to our home and took our Down syndrome child and just told us, because the whole place was very crowded, and just told us, don't worry about him, I've got him.
That's lovely of them.
I am eternally grateful to Shalva for that.
I understand. We didn't say, by the way, at some point you do learn how your son was kidnapped.
Yes. On Friday night, when I was certain, due to all the prayers, and I had asked women to light an extra candle for my son, and I got over 100,000 letters from people saying they hadn't prayed before, and they did so, and women saying that they had not lit a Shabbat candle, and they did so for Nachshon. On Friday night, I was sure he'd walk through the door, and instead, General Yoram Yair walked through the door, took us into a side room, and he told us everything. Israeli intelligence on Thursday had captured the driver of a car that had picked Nachshon up. They were dressed as Hasidim in the car, and there was a Bible and a prayer book on the dashboard with Hasidic music coming out of the tape deck. Nachshon got into the car. They took him to the village of Bir Nabala, as you said earlier, not far from my home in Jerusalem. We only heard from General Yoram Yair, and he told us that they had captured the driver of the car, who described where they were holding Nachshon, where the house was, how to get in, which room they were holding Nachshon in. The rescue attempt failed. I won't go into detail. A lot of it is still classified. And General Yair told us that Rabin had made a unilateral decision to send in a military rescue team.
When you heard that there was going to be a rescue attempt?
I didn't know in advance. I only heard after my son was killed. We did not know this was happening.
You did not know beforehand?
No.
So when you're at the wall, for example, Thursday night into Friday, you don't know what Rabin's going to do?
No, I do not. No, I do not. I only heard of it after the hour of the ultimatum on Friday night.
Okay. In retrospect, by the way, what would have been better for you? Not to know and to be sort of, for lack of a better phrase, in the dark? Or do you think it would have been better for you to know that they were going to try to rescue your son?
I really don't know. I'm glad Nachshon was alive and knew they were there, because they shot him while they were already rescuing him.
Well, that was not clear to me. I did not know if you knew that.
Yes, he was alive. They actually, the soldiers told the terrorists that they could run away. They would leave them alone, just give us our soldier. And that's when they shot him. They said, we've just killed your soldier. And that's when they killed the terrorists as well, and the commander of the raid was killed also. I did not know.
You don't know this. You know none of this until after the event.
On Saturday night, before the funeral, Rabin and Ehud Barak, who was commander-in-chief of the armed forces, came to our home to tell us what had happened after we already knew from General Yoram Yair Friday night. My husband asked to be left alone in a room with Rabin. This is not breaking news. I've said it before. What he said to Rabin when they were together, just the two of them, was, why didn't you buy some more time? Why didn't you lie and say you would negotiate and give this team, this military force, time to prepare a better attack? They had only 24 hours. And yes, that upset me tremendously.
It upset you that they tried to do this with only 24 hours?
Yes, I agreed with my husband that they could have bought some time and said, okay, they're considering negotiating, whatever, even if he was fixed on a military attack, they could have prepared for several days and not just several hours.
There are feelings we all have in the moment, and upon reflection and living with something for a while, it's not that the emotion goes away if it were honest, but it changes. When your husband spoke with Rabin and asked this question in the privacy of this room, and in essence, he was echoing what you felt as well, was he furious?
Yes.
Did he remain furious?
Rabin walked out of that room sobbing. His wife told us that she had only seen him cry once before when he lost his best friend in the Six-Day War. He walked out of my house sobbing.
You remember that?
Yes, I do.
Are you still furious, Esther?
I'm not happy. Am I still furious? He was killed a year later. Rabin was assassinated 1 year to the day of my Memorial Day for Nachshon, the anniversary of his death. We went to comfort Leah Rabin at that time. She whispered in my ear, I know it's harder to lose a son than a husband. How could I still be furious? He's gone.
I understand. By the way, you learn because a general comes to your home and tells you.
Yes.
Is that the most horrific moment a human being can endure?
Yes. And I think I've endured plenty.
Yes.
Nothing like this. You never get over it, ever. He's with me every day, every minute. Pictures of him all over the house, of course. My children who are married have themselves with their brother all over.
How many
I have 3 grandchildren with his name.
Lovely. How many grandchildren in all?
15. May they multiply.
Mazal tov.
Thank you.
Mazal tov. You know, it's not just that you're this extraordinary Israeli. and an extraordinary woman and person. You're also a deeply, profoundly committed Jew. The Jewish tradition understands that there really can be horrific tragedies in life. It insists that we find the good in life, that we continue to choose life and live for our other children and our grandchildren, our husband, our community, our people, to make good in the world. It's understandable if your mother doesn't ever want to talk about the tattoo. If you came and said, I'll talk, but don't ask me to talk about Nachshon, I'd understand. But my sense of you is, Esther, that despite the worst tragedy a human being, mommy, could ever live with, you continue to embrace life. I want to know, number one, am I being romantic or do I sense the truth? And to the extent to which it is true, I want you to try to explain to me, what is it inside Esther Wachsman that's enabled you to do that? First of all, is it true?
It is true. I knew right away. I always had 6 other sons who needed a mother. Proceeded to have grandchildren years later. But, again, this is a very famous thing that happened. My husband asked Nachshon's Rosh Yeshiva, principal, to give the eulogy.
Yes.
And he told him to please say in his name, in Nachshon's father's name, I have asked God for many things over the years. And the answer has been yes, he has granted many of my wishes. And he was concerned that there might be a crisis in faith. People who hadn't prayed before, as I said earlier, or hadn't lit a Shabbat candle, they will say God didn't hear our prayers. And I want you, the rabbi, to please tell everyone that there's no such thing as an unheard prayer. God said yes to me many times. When my children ask me for things as a father, I'd always like to say yes to them. Sometimes I have to say no. Those children don't understand why I'm saying no. And certainly our Father in heaven is allowed to say no. No is an answer we don't understand, but there is a master plan and we don't understand it, but we must accept it. And that's what strengthened our beliefs. As I said, I had 6 more children to be there for, to raise, to have the right values for. We just gathered our strength and went on. And yes, I laugh and I dance and I sing, and it doesn't matter. I still think of Nachshon, and I think he'd want me to be this way.
Amen v'amen, Amen v'amen.
Amen v'amen. Can you hear that?
So I want to ask you the philosophical question that confronts the state of Israel all the time. Israel has always taken the position it will not negotiate with terrorists. Is Israel right, in your opinion, to have this philosophy?
First of all, the philosophy did not carry through. Over 1,000 terrorists were freed for 3 soldiers' bodies in Lebanon.
Correct.
And recently, Gilad Shalit was freed after 5 years of being hidden underground, never saw the light of day. He was captured by Hamas terrorists, as was my son, same gang. His parents set up a tent next door to the Prime Minister's house in Jerusalem. We came, my husband and I went to that tent very often to give them moral support. That last year, before he was released, when the pressure was very great, there were a lot of demonstrations and marches for his sake to have him released. I spoke to both Prime Minister Ehud Olmert and to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and told them both that if by releasing the driver of the car, who was not killed in the house,
the driver of the car
who kidnapped my son, was serving a life sentence. Said, if you can get Gilad Shalit back, release him. I said it as a mother. I said, these are not my principles. Right now, Netanyahu is releasing terrorists left and right for no reason at all. A goodwill gesture, it's called. I'm totally opposed to that, totally against it. For Gilad to come back to his mother, I told the prime ministers that I am speaking only as a mother. If he can come back to his mother, I want him to.
You were in favor of releasing these terrorists.
I was not in favor. I can't go that far. But yes.
You didn't oppose it.
I did not. And I was not very popular.
By the way, there were a lot of Israelis, especially Israelis who were relatives, who were living relatives of people that had died at the hands of the terrorists who were being released for Gilad Shalit.
Yes, and there was a tremendous contingent against.
Enormous. I mean, it's a very difficult situation for Israel, the prime minister. And
I had a tremendous dilemma, but I chose to do what I did.
Okay, but you do say it's a dilemma, Esther.
Very great dilemma. Tremendous.
But just so the audience understands, say the two sides in you. What on the one hand and on the one hand, what?
My own sons, my other sons, who had all served in the IDF, said to me, Ima, these terrorists are going to come back and kill again. What if they kill one of us? What are you doing? I said, I need this boy to get home to his mother.
Were your sons against it?
Yes.
Your sons were against it?
Yes.
How about your husband?
Do whatever you want. He did not speak up the way I did. He was neutral. I mean, I think he was opposed, but I'm the one who had to speak up.
Are you saying to me in the privacy of your room he never told you what he thought?
He did.
What
but
did he say?
Did not oppose me.
He did not oppose you?
No.
But privately he sided with your sons? Privately?
That's private.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. But he did not take the public stand you did?
No, he did not.
Was your stand made public?
Yes, it was. I was on television, quoted constantly for Gilad.
Were you criticized?
Yes, I was.
Did it hurt?
No. I had the dilemma, and I made my decision.
So what Esther Wachsman is saying is, you were glad that Israel made the trade for Gilad Shalit.
I was glad Gilad Shalit came home to his mother.
Okay. I will accept it exactly as you say it.
Thank you.
By the way, at one point, I feel very bad because I feel like every Israeli, every American Jew should know the names of the 3 Israeli soldiers who came back in caskets. One was
Avraham. One was a Druze Arab who I'm afraid I don't even remember his name.
Ehud was the most famous one, though, wasn't it?
Yes. What was his last name?
Okay.
You see, when you said how difficult it is for me to talk, I made it a mission that nobody forget the name Nachshon Waxman. And you've just proved me right, because so many are gone, and I don't know their names.
It's one thing to bring Gilad Shalit back to his mother. Did you feel the same?
Goldwasser.
Ehud Goldwasser.
Just
Mitsuya. Good for you. We both feel better.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Ehud and for a long, his wife was here, and
yes.
she also fought so hard to get her husband back.
Karen was her name.
Karen, right, and she is a remarkable human being.
Yes, she is.
In any case, do you feel that the same is true even if you're just bringing caskets back?
It's never the same, but yes.
Yes.
Yes, to bring them to a Jewish grave. It's very, very, very. Their parents can now go to a grave.
And your sons say to you, Ima, the people you release may one day take the life of your grandchild.
Yes, they said that.
It did not sway you?
Obviously not.
Okay, but it is why it's such an enormous dilemma.
Tremendous. It was not an easy decision.
Okay.
I'm not even sure I'm right.
Fair enough. Esther, isn't this the dilemma that faces the state of Israel in so many ways all the time?
I'd never want to have to make that decision as prime minister.
Yes, but I'm asking you a slightly different question. It's no longer about soldier for soldier.
I know.
What I'm saying is, people don't understand the horrific dilemmas Israel is forced to contend with by an enemy that just won't say one thing: live in peace with me. And you hear critics of Israel all the time, and it's not like Israel is a perfect place. Nobody says that. No Jew. This is not about idyllic. The question is, in terms of real life situation, human beings doing the best they can, Israel has done an extraordinary job in its relationship with an enemy which, will dress up like Hasidim, drive a car with Hasidic music playing and a Bible and a prayer book on the dashboard, and get in and seduce an Israeli soldier into the back seat. And then basically say, either you trade with us or we're going to kill you. And by the way, I understand it from the Palestinian perspective. This is how they're fighting. It's a war. They feel they're at war with us. And at the same time, it's very hard to deal with an enemy that wants basically to send kids with bombs strapped to their bellies into a pizza shop. But what I'm saying is that Israel faces very difficult dilemmas of all kinds in the relationship with the enemy at the moment. And while on the one hand, we always want Israel to be and do the right thing in the highest moral, idealistic sense, there's a real life here. And sometimes you must do the best you can and choose the least damaging option. Isn't there some truth to that?
100%. My husband and I were in the United States shortly after our loss, and we spoke in many communities about terror. We brought in textbooks from Palestinian schools, first grade and up, all with the propaganda of you must hate the Jews from when you're a child, and it is a good deed, it is a positive thing to kill as many as you can to ensure your place in heaven.
First grade textbook.
Yes. We brought those books in with us. We showed them to different communities at the time in the United States, in Europe, in Australia, in Canada.
Esther, do you hate Palestinians?
I don't hate anybody on a one-to-one basis. I've spoken to many Palestinians. Maybe they call themselves Israeli Arabs. Whatever it is, one-to-one, I'm not going to say some of my best friends are Palestinian, but yes, we have had relations with people, men, women. So you can't hate an entity. I can't.
Do you have any hope that in your lifetime there'll be a peace between Israel and the Palestinians?
No.
Because?
When they state unequivocally, the parents are proud of their children who blow themselves up. Who are we supposed to be making peace with? No. I'm sorry.
You have chosen, in a way, to memorialize your son in an extraordinary outreach to other people.
Yes.
There is Beit Nachshon.
Yes.
Incidentally, you chose Nachshon's name on purpose, didn't you?
Yes.
Tell our audience why.
Nachshon was born on the last day of Passover. On that day, we read the Torah portion about Nachshon, the son of Aminadab, from the president of the tribe of Yehuda. Judah. He was the first to jump into the Red Sea when God promised the children of Israel that it would turn into dry land. That was an act of pure faith and belief in God. At the same time, last day of Passover, in modern Jewish history, during the War for Independence, Operation Nachshon took place on that day. That was the operation that opened the road to Jerusalem. We felt that name incorporated all of our values of belief and faith together with heroism, our people, and our state.
Wonderful. By the way, just so our audience understands and we make clear, the Nachshon story about the Red Sea is a midrash. It's not in the Torah proper. But the way the Jewish tradition is read, as you say, the rabbis have taught us that the sea did not split until one of the Israelites was able to summon up whatever is inside one and go forward and plunge into the sea. And there's many versions of the midrash. In one, he leaps into the sea splits. In another, he has to walk up to his nose and the sea splits. But the point is that, as you so beautifully describe, in the Jewish tradition, the sea only splits when there is a Jew, in this case Nachshon ben Aminadav, a prince of the tribe of Judah, is the one who says, yes, we will go forward.
You know that from there comes the motto of the Jewish army, which is Acharai, after me.
Yes, which is in essence what Nachshon was saying.
From there, yes.
By the way, just so we finish it, because you know your Torah very well. You know, in the Jewish in the Torah, the line is "Ma titzak elai." Why are you crying to me? Yes. Tell the children of Israel to go forward. That's what the line in the book of Exodus, God tells Moses. Why are you crying to me to split the sea? Tell the children of Israel to go forward. And from that line, the rabbis create this midrash of Nachshon. And you choose that as the name of your son because it reflects who you are. And again, Operation Nachshon was critical to the saving of Jerusalem during the 1948, they broke the blockade that the Arabs had. So you chose this name very carefully, and in some way, you know your son Nachshon will live forever. And then you chose to memorialize him in a certain way. Describe it to our audience.
Yes. As I said, my youngest child was born with Down syndrome. He has special needs. As a family, when you have a special needs child, the other children suffer. All of our energy, devotion, time was very much geared to the special child, whom we took to various therapies, speech, physical therapy, music therapy, art therapy, whatever existed. Then we discovered a place called Shalva, which started with 10 or 12 children, and all the therapies were now being given under one roof. We took our 4-year-old at the time to Shalva, and we became a normal, functioning family again. And don't forget, he had a twin brother, a baby of the same age, and I could mother those children again and do homework with them while Raphael was being cared for at Shalva. The founder and director of Shalva came to my home, as I said, when he heard about the missing soldier and took Raphael and said, don't worry about him until further notice. I have decided, and then we named the new building, the new facility that we built for hundreds of children, and we're building an even newer one now for thousands of children. Unfortunately, the need is there, and the Shalva new building was named Beit Nachshon. We found that the most fitting memorial, instead of bricks and mortar, to help the weakest members of society, and I have become their spokesman.
It is so wonderful, Esther. Beit Nachshon, the home of Nachshon. Beit Nachshon is now a major institution in Jerusalem, correct?
Yes, in Jerusalem.
Mazal tov to you. Mazal tov. And you know, by the way, there's nothing would be better for Nachshon to live a long, healthy life, marry, children, grandchildren, in peace. No one's guaranteed any length of time on this earth. It sounds to me like you had a very special son in Nachshon, and what you've done is you've made an eternal monument for him in a very, very significant way. And it's not just that, you know, Beit Nachshon will now be a haven to so many people thanks to him and you, but in some way it also memorializes his name and therefore his memory. And I'm very proud of you. It's been wonderful, wonderful getting to know you.
Thank you very much.
So the last thing I want you to say isn't about your son. People now have spent an hour together with you through the this miracle of television. And they know now something about Esther bat.
Aharon v'Nechama.
Very nice. Summarize for me now, at this point in your life, how you feel today about the state of Israel and what you wish every American Jew understood better about the state of Israel.
First of all, I think everybody should know that we do not live in fear. We lead perfectly normal lives, go about our daily routines. Yes, there is a tension. Yes, we are aware of our enemies. We also feel that we need to make our own decisions and not be pressured into doing things, as you said earlier, that are morally perhaps clear, but there is a dilemma. I still think that every Jew belongs in Israel. I believe that that will make us stronger and better and give the peace a better chance if we were more millions. I hope that happens.
Amen v'amen.
Amen v'amen.
So I want to end for you by pointing out something I hope people have said to you all the time. You also have a very important Hebrew name. And it just so happens that as we're taping this, we're about to celebrate the holiday of Purim.
Yes.
And in our history, the person of Esther, the fact that she's queen is not what it's about. It's about the strength of a Jewish woman who, by the way, for a moment didn't know what she wanted to do and had to be reminded of her responsibility. But when she was reminded, she did what was the ultimate act of Jewish heroism, courage, strength, faith, and what she did was led to the salvation of her people. So Esther, without embarrassing you, there is so much of our Esther in you and what you have done, not only for your family, but because you've had the courage to speak out on the Israeli scene as a whole. You are a modern Esther, and you are my queen. You are a Malka, and it has been just so wonderful to be able to not only meet you, but to present you to America through L'chaim and Shalom TV. I wish you kol tuva hatzlacha, health for you, your family, your husband, all of your children, your grandchildren.
Amen.
And I hope one day when I'm in Israel, I can come by, see not only Beit Nachshon, but to meet your whole family.
I'd love to host you.
That would be, we will do it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
My meeting with Esther Wachsman, the mother of Nachshon Waxman. Again, the 19-year-old Israeli soldier from the Golani Brigade who was murdered by Hamas terrorists on October 14th, 1994. And what an extraordinary meeting this has been. You know, I always invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments you may have to the guests we present you. But look, you met an extraordinary human being here, and if you want to be in touch with Esther yourself, just email me at Rabbi Golub at Shalom TV, and I will pass your emails on to her. But as I say it all the time, please email me, write me, post on our Facebook wall, tweet me. I look forward to hearing from all of you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'chaim, my friends, to life.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support Shalom TV with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the Shalom TV website homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive on DVD with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.
L'chaim is a presentation of Jewish Education in Media.